Alright guys, broadcast receiver, we have talked a little bit about them, but now let's find out what they are, how they work, and most importantly, how to exploit them. Alrighty, and let's have a look. So those broadcast receivers on an Android system are pretty amazing. It's some kind of notification system for your applications. Let's say we've got a lot of applications running on our smartphone right now. I mean, maybe we do not have to assume this because this is most of the time the case. So we've got some mail, some calculator, and also some music application. We are now listening to some music within our music application, and we are connecting some headphones to our smartphone right now. This is an event, and the smartphone is receiving this event and is broadcasting this event to every application. This is a broadcast message. So every application will be informed that some headphones has been connected. The mail application, the calculator application, our music application, and the SMS application. Some of them might say, what the heck, I really don't care about this one, and simply ignore this. But our music application really takes care about this event because we can now react to this one. If we are now connecting some headphones, we can react in the onReceive method to this event. So within the onReceive method, we are saying, okay, if some headphones are being connected, then do something. We could, for example, pause the music, we could lower the volume, or we can tune it up to make it heavily loud, which makes absolutely no sense, but we could. Alrighty? Okay, so this is a broadcast receiver in a nutshell. An event happens on the smartphone is informing every application about this event, and within our application, we can react to this one in the onReceive method. Alrighty? Okay, perfect. The time window we have is, I guess, about 5 seconds, but don't quote me on this one. After a certain amount of time, this broadcast event is gone like it has never happened. In newer versions, we can extend this time window because we can do asynchronous broadcast events, but this is nothing we have to take care about as an attacker. This is something the developer has to bother with. So now might be the question, what other types of events are we having on our smartphone where the smartphone is informing every application about it? Well, we've got tons of other events. Another one would be, for example, if the battery is running low. This is a system event which gets broadcasted to every application. And this is also pretty important. I mean, if we are now a developer and we have a huge stack in our application which has not been saved and the smartphone is running low on battery, we might want to save this right now. Because if the smartphone gets shut down, we might lose some information in our application. And this is something we definitely do not want to have. So running low on battery is also an event which will be sent to every application. Besides this, we've got lots of other things. For example, if we are entering the airplane mode, if the Wi-Fi connection changes, if we are changing the time zone in the smartphone, if we are connecting something via USB, if we are doing something with the camera, if some package is being deployed on the smartphone, if we are dealing with Bluetooth, or if we are having a pairing request, things like this. So you can see there are a lot of broadcasts out there. So these are all system broadcast events, but we can also define our own custom broadcast event. So we can define our own sending and receiving method. And then we can use this to send out our own broadcast event. I mean, other applications might not react to this one because they do not know this custom event, but this can be used to exchange information between applications. We will have a look into this one in custom broadcast receivers in a moment. For now, let's talk about ordered broadcasts first, because this is also pretty important. Ordered broadcast events have some sort of priority in there, which means, let's say we've got these 3 applications. We've got our system SMS application, we've got our own application which wants to read SMS. This is absolutely perfectly fine if the user gives the permission. And we've got a banking application which is waiting for those TAN numbers. Now we can define a certain priority for these applications. I mean, this is being done by the developer, so the developer is putting some priority into a certain file. And the file we are talking about is the Android manifest XML. So here we are defining our own priority of our broadcast receiver. Okay, so now's the question, where's the difference? Well, let's say an SMS arrives at the smartphone. And this is also a broadcast event. But this time right now, not all applications are being informed about this one. Only the one with the highest priority. In this case, it's the system SMS application. So this one over here. And now there's this tricky part. This application which receives this event first can make a decision if it wants to forward this event to all lower privileged application. In this case, for example, our own application. If it does, then we have now the decision to forward it to the banking application or not. We can disline this event, then the banking application doesn't realize that an SMS has been received right now. So this is how an ordered broadcast works. We've got a certain priority that the developer is giving the priority by himself, and then the application can make the decision to forward this event to all lower privileged or not. So this can be absolutely ridiculous, and in the past it was. Because in Android 4.3, yes, it's super old, I guess 2010-11, but there was a huge vulnerability regarding to this one. Because within Android 4.3, you could make an application and you can set the priority to 999, which was higher than the system SMS application. And now there's this absolutely ridiculous part. If the smartphone is now receiving this SMS, the attacker is having this SMS first, and the attacker can make the decision to inform the system SMS application about this event. So the attacker could disline this, and then the smartphone is not showing any evidence that an SMS has been received right now. There was no signal, no audio, and no pop-up regarding to this one. And now imagine at the given time what was possible. I mean, the attacker could read an SMS and it could also make the decision to forward it. Let's say we've got a banking application and the banking application is waiting for a transaction number, a TAN. The attacker is receiving this TAN right now, and then the attacker could make the decision if the banking application should receive this TAN or not. I mean, absolutely ridiculous, right? If the attacker has also compromised the banking account of this given person, then the attacker could use this TAN and the user even doesn't realize what's going on over here. So the user might be ordering a second TAN, which the attacker could simply forward it to the user, and the user thinks, okay, something was strange, but now I've got my TAN, but this doesn't work anymore, and the money has gone. So this was an absolutely huge vulnerability, which has been fixed in Android 4.4. Those type of vulnerabilities might not occur that often anymore, at least for system applications, but they can be pretty likely occur in custom applications. So if the custom application is setting an priority in the middle, you as an attacker might be able to set a higher priority, and then you can tamper around with this one. I guess now it's limited to 100, but I'm also not 100% sure about this one. At least it's not 999 anymore. Okay, so far so good. I guess we've gotten a good feeling about broadcast events right now. We know if an event happens on the smartphone is informing those applications about this event. It can be all, it can be just a single application, and we can have an ordered broadcast, which means there's some kind of priority in this notification chain. Alrighty? Okay, the main question right now might be, where do we have to look for those broadcast events? So as an attacker, how do we find out which event this application is listening to? For example, this mail application might not take care about some headphones being connected. So where do we find this information? And the answer is over here, in the Android manifest XML. At least for Android applications till version 8. So in Android version 8, there was a huge change regarding to this progress, and this did catch me absolutely off guard. So this was a little bit pain. But don't worry, we are doing both. We are doing the old approach, which has been defined in the Android manifest XML, and we are also doing the new approach that you are well prepared for modern applications right now. Alrighty? Okay, perfect. Let's first look into applications which are lower than Android version 8. There we have to take a look into the Android manifest XML, because here we have now the definition as a receiver. So we've got our receiver tags. Within those receiver tags, we've got, for example, the Android name BroadcastReceiver. So this is the Java class where this broadcast receiver has been defined. If we are taking a look into this one, we will find the application code regarding to this broadcast receiver. Also the onReceive method, which is the most important method if we are analyzing a broadcast receiver. Alrighty? Okay, perfect. Next, we've got those intent filters, and these are pretty important in many ways. The first important thing is having those intent filters means we are having an implicit exported true. So this broadcast receiver is now being exported. And of course, it has to be exported because otherwise it couldn't reach or receive those intents. So it wouldn't even recognize that an event has happened. This is also the case why most or barely all broadcast receivers are being exported to the outside world, which might make them vulnerable to attacks. And this is why broadcast receivers are pretty important in our application analysis. So the intent filter is now exporting this BroadcastReceiver to the outside world that it can react to those intents, and it's listening into the smartphone. and it's now waiting for those 3 actions. We've got action boot, log boot completed, and quick boot power on. All of them are regarding to the booting process of the smartphone. So when the smartphone has been finished booting, the smartphone is informing those applications, which are listening to this event, about this process. So the smartphone is sending one of them, 3, only 2 of them to those applications. The question might be why we're having 3 actions for only one single task. And the answer for this one is manufacturers. Manufacturers can define their own broadcast events, and if we want to have an application which is compatible to many manufacturers, we have to include all of them. So there might be only one intent, for example this boot intent being sent out, but yeah, it might depend on the manufacturer. So as an attacker, we do not take care too much about this, because this is also, again, the developer part. The developer has to make sure that this application is being compatible to other manufacturers and has to take care about all these different intents. Alrighty? Okay. We as an attacker, we simply look them up and then we know what this application is listening to. Alright, and yeah, this is all. So we're having the Java class, my broadcast receiver. We're having those intent filter, which means our Java class is being exported, and we're listening to 3 actions right now, to those 3. Okay, beside those actions, we once again could have the following. We could have category and also data included into this intent filter. But most of the time, we're simply just dealing with action. So the action is the most important part over here. Okay, sending and receiving those intents can be also combined to permissions. So within our application, if we want to listen to this intent, we need to have the permission in our Android manifest, receive boot completed, because this is something the user needs to be informed about it, because this could be easily used in malicious application. It doesn't mean if an application is using this permission that it is automatically being malicious, but this is some kind of auto task to run our application after a system reboot. So if we're having our attacking application, we do not need to wait until the user opens this app. We could define a service which will be started when this broadcast event will be received. And this service is running silently in the background, so the user doesn't realize that this application has been started. It's like running the auto task on a Windows system. So every time you reboot the system, the auto task is automatically starting or executing a program. And also over here, there can be absolute valid use cases, but of course, this can be also used regarding to malware. And therefore, we need to have this permission. Another example would be regarding to incoming calls. If you're not having this permission set in our Android application, but would have the ability to tamper with this in broadcast events, I mean, this would be absolutely hilarious, right? So an attacker could make an application which is not requesting the calling permission, but could tamper with this one. Therefore, this is of course not possible. We have to set this permission, and then we can also receive and interact with those broadcast events regarding to incoming or outgoing calls. Alrighty? Okay, so far we keep in mind, we've got our intent filter. Within the intent filter, we've got our actions, and these are those intents where we are listening to. Those intents can have certain permissions. These could be system permissions, or it could be also user permissions tied to them. So if you want to use them, we have to request those permissions. Alright, but this approach is unfortunately outdated till version 8. So this is not working anymore. You get some error, background execution is not allowed. Therefore, we have to define it in the Java code directly, and it looks like this. So within the Java code, we've got now this register receiver, and this is taking 2 arguments. The first one is the name of the broadcast receiver we want to register. In this case, it's my broadcast. The second parameter is an intent filter. So the thing we have defined in the Android manifest will be now defined in the Java code. So here we are providing as a parameter our action name, in this case boot. In case if you want to have more actions, of course we could apply more actions in there. Then we've got our broadcast receiver, my broadcast, which is defining a new broadcast receiver. And then we've got again our onReceive method, which is containing the code. So this is now the new approach, and we have to deal with a lot of things right now. So the first one is the application needs to run, because if the application is not running, then we are not having our Java code registering our broadcast receiver. So background execution is not being allowed anymore. The second challenge is, if we're using automated tools, they might not have been updated regarding to this approach. So if they try to identify broadcast receivers, they might simply take a look into the Android manifest XML, but not into the application code. which means we could miss some stuff. And this is why we are here, because here we will learn the backgrounds about this one, and now we can deal with this on our own. So in case if the automated tool is missing something, we can look it up manually. At least in the reverse engineering section, we will learn how to decompile applications and have a look into this application code. And then we would be able to identify methods like register receiver or onReceive methods. Alrighty? Okay. So if you're using automated tools, make sure that they are working with the newest approaches. I mean newest regarding to Android 8. But yes, this might not be the case for all those tools out there right now. And some of them might not be even further developed. So therefore, using automated tools, absolutely no problem, but make sure that they are working correctly. Alrighty? Okay, so now we know how to identify the broadcast receivers for a given application. We need to take a look into the Android manifest XML or within the Java code directly to see which actions has been defined. So to which actions this application is listening to. Now is the question, how can we exploit them? And the answer for this one is, it depends. So if you're having a look into this one, triggering and broadcast receiver can be done by a malicious application running on the smartphone, or it can be done by the ADB shell directly. So for testing, the ADB shell is absolutely fine, but regarding to a practical attack vector, I would assume it has to be a malicious application, because if you have ADB access, you might not need to trigger a broadcast event. Alrighty? Okay. So if you're triggering a broadcast event, the question is, what can go wrong? One answer to this one is if we apply some sensitive information in our intent. So a broadcast event will be sent via an intent, which means we can also apply data to this event, like this one over here. So we can put some strings into this broadcast event, and then this would be sent out to every application. An attacker can listen to this one and is receiving this intent. And in this case, the attacker could simply fetch the token which has been transferred via this broadcast event. So one thing we have to look for are sensitive information being stored in those intents. I mean, we have seen this in the intent sniffing part. This is exactly what we are having also here. Another problem could be within the permissions. So the developer is defining a custom permission, which is required by an application to receive or send those broadcast events. We as an attacker could simply claim this permission if it has not been proper secured. It's only being proper secured if it's using protection level signature. Everything else is not in the control of the developer anymore. We talk about this protection level signature in the signing section, where we will go through what this means. So far, it simply just means that both applications have to be signed with the same key. And this is something the attacker cannot fake. So an attacker cannot spoof this permission, so the attacker cannot simply claim that the attacking application has been signed with the same private key. This is not the case, and therefore the attacker could also not tamper around with those broadcast events. Unless if the attacker has root privileges, but then we are having some other problems. Okay, to sum this up, if the attacker does not have root privileges and the protection level is being signature, then the attacker cannot interact with this broadcast receiver. But if this is simply just a custom permission, like this one over here, then the attacker can include this permission into its own application, and then the attacker would be able again to receive and send those broadcast events. So the vulnerability could be the following. The developer has included this custom permission into its own application and relies on this one that no one else can claim this one over here. So this is a misunderstanding that still happens nowadays. This custom permission can be now claimed by an attacker. It depends on the protection level. Sometimes it's being set to dangerous, which means the user has to accept this. But even then, I wouldn't rely on that the user does realize what's going on over here and never gives the attacker permission to perform this task. If the attacker has now claimed this permission, the attacker can trigger this broadcast event and cause the sensitive interaction. For example, regarding to an alarm system, disarm or arm a system. Or regarding to this one over here, read out a sensitive token. So the vulnerability depends on the application code of the developer. And once again, we only have to take a look into the onReceive method. There we will find out what is being triggered, and there we will also find out which input is being used from this broadcast event. And so for example, if it's using some tokens stored in a string, like this one over here. Alright? Okay. Last but not least, we could have something like a local broadcast manager. And this one is a broadcast event that only happens in the internal application. So this doesn't reach the outside world. It can be used to exchange information between certain classes, activities, services, stuff like this. So we can use broadcast events to exchange data within our application or to exchange data with other applications outside our application context. From our attacking point of view, we simply skip local broadcast manager because we cannot interact with them from the outside world. So these broadcast receivers are within the sandbox of this application. We cannot interact with them. Alrighty? Okay, so this was now a lot of theory and a lot of input. To sum this up, this will be super quick. All we need to know is the following. The only method we can interact with is the onReceive method. And there we have to take a look into what we can do. Having a broadcast receiver doesn't automatically mean there is some kind of exploit or vulnerability in there. If this onReceive method is simply just printing out an hello world, then we could trigger hello worlds, but this is not a vulnerability. We have to take a look which code is being defined in the onReceive method, and we also have to take care about the input this method is receiving. We will do all of this in a practical example afterwards, so don't worry if it's now a little bit confusing. All you need to know if you analyze a broadcast receiver, have a look into the onReceive method. That's the only method you need to take care about. Alright. Last but not least, to identify those broadcast receivers, we have to take a look into the Android manifest XML. And if there is no broadcast receiver defined, it doesn't mean that this application is not using a broadcast receiver. We also have to take a look into the Java code. I mean, we can sum this up, have a look into the Java code, into the onReceive method. This is all you need to do. We will learn about reverse engineering an Android application in the reversing section. So there we will talk about decompiling an application, restoring the Java code, identifying the onReceive method, and things like this. Okay, this is all for this video. So as already mentioned, it was a lot of theory, but we will sum this up with some practical example. There we will identify the broadcast receivers, and we will also see how to trigger certain actions and how to exploit vulnerability. Alrighty? Okay, so I'm looking forward to see you there.